All right, let's get right into it and talk about practical Agile leadership. We're going to dive into why doing Agile so often doesn't feel very, well, Agile, and more importantly, how you can actually build teams that are truly effective, not just spinning their wheels. So does this sound familiar? It's probably the number one question I hear from leaders. You've got the sprints, you've got the stand-ups, the whole ceremony is in place, but it just feels like you're running in mud. You were promised a high-performance race car and you feel like you're stuck driving a minivan in traffic. So what is really going on under the hood? The first thing we have to tackle is this trap that so many of us fall into. We try to force speed. We push harder, we demand more, and it almost always backfires and slows us down even more. It's that classic paradox. The more you rush, the further behind you get. Let's break down exactly why that happens. Okay, here it is. The classic number one mistake. A project is running late, and what's the knee-jerk reaction? Throw more people at it. But, there's this old rule in software called Brooks's Law, and it's spot on. Adding people to a late project just makes it later. And why is that? Because you're not just adding more hands to do the work, you're adding way more communication lines, more complexity, more dependencies. It's kind of like trying to cook a meal faster by shoving 10 more chefs into a tiny kitchen. Everyone just ends up getting in each other's way. So, if throwing more people at the problem is a trap, then what on earth is the alternative? Well, the answer is all about building the right foundation first. And that foundation is the stable team. This is the real engine of throughput, and it's where we're going to focus our attention next. Look, you really have two paths you can go down here. On the left, you've got fragmentation, which is basically organized chaos. People are being pulled in 10 different directions, juggling multiple projects, and that constant context switching absolutely destroys productivity. But on the right, you have stability, a dedicated, focused team. This isn't just a team. It's a well-oiled machine that builds momentum, trust, and deep expertise over time. This isn't about feelings. It's about delivering real, actual, predictable results. So how do we actually build this well-oiled machine? Here are 4 super practical ways to get there. First, stop trying to boil the ocean with every release. Ship smaller, more focused chunks of value more often. Second, automate all the boring, repetitive stuff. Let the computers do that and free up your smart, creative people to solve real, interesting problems. Third, build teams that have all the skills they need to get the job done from start to finish without waiting on someone else. And finally, and this one is maybe the most important, dedicate people to one team, full stop. One team, full focus, full power. Okay, so we've talked about building a fast team, but speed for the sake of speed is completely useless. It's like having a race car with no map and no destination. And this brings us to a huge fundamental shift in how we need to think. The difference between just being busy and actually creating value. Let's redefine what done truly means. In the Agile world, it's so easy to get obsessed with velocity, right? It's a simple number that tells us how much stuff a team got done in a sprint. But here is the critical catch. It's a measure of output, not outcome. You can have a sky-high velocity, building a dozen features, but if nobody ever uses them, you've created zero value. You're just a factory churning out widgets that are going to sit on a shelf and collect dust. And this quote just hits the nail on the head. It really doesn't matter how fast you are. It doesn't matter how many story points you complete. The only, and I mean only, true measure of success is whether you solved a real problem for a customer. That's it. That's the ultimate test. So let's just make this crystal clear so it really sinks in. Velocity is not value. It can be a useful tool for a team's internal planning, sure, but it is never the goal. The goal is to deliver something that matters to your customers, period. So who's responsible for making sure the team is building the right thing and not just busy work? Well, that falls squarely on the shoulders of the product owner. Their job is to be the voice of that customer, to listen to all the stakeholders, to weigh all the competing priorities, and then to make the tough calls about what will deliver the most value right now. And here's a critical point. They don't need everyone to agree. They need to make a decision and own it. This brings us to a really interesting question. If teams are self-organizing and the product owner is deciding what to build, what's left for a leader or a manager to do? The answer requires a complete shift in your mindset. You have to stop being a controller and start being a gardener. Think about the difference between these two styles. On the left, you have the old way, the command and control micromanager, the puppet master pulling every single string. And on the right, you have the agile way. You have the gardener, whose job is to create the perfect environment for the team to grow and flourish on its own.
Gardeners don't tell the plants how to grow. They just make sure they have good soil, enough water, and plenty of sunlight.
So what does being a gardener actually look like day to day? Well, it boils down to these 4 key roles. 1. Be a roadblock demolisher. Your job is to hunt down and eliminate anything slowing your team down, whether it's a piece of bureaucracy or a technical bottleneck. 2. Be a guardian of the team's autonomy. Trust them to figure out the how and protect them from outside meddling. 3. Be a champion of learning. Create a space where it's safe to fail, because failure is just another word for learning. And 4. Be a compass, not a GPS. Set a clear direction, a clear vision, but let the team chart their own path to get there. Okay, so this all sounds great when you've got 1, maybe 2 teams, but what happens when you have a whole fleet of teams all working on the same product? How do you keep everyone rowing in the same direction and not crashing into each other? Well, that's where a scaling framework like Nexus comes into play. Let's just take a quick look at the core ideas. If you take away only one thing about scaling Scrum, let it be this. This is the absolute, non-negotiable foundation of it all. One product backlog. Every team pulls their work from the exact same prioritized list. This is the single source of truth that keeps everyone aligned and ensures they're all working on a most valuable thing for the product as a whole. No exceptions. So Nexus is built on that foundation of a single backlog, but it adds a couple more really important principles. We've already talked about the single backlog. Nexus also says your sprint length should get shorter when you have more uncertainty. That way you can get feedback faster and change course if you need to. And finally, it introduces a special team, the Nexus Integration Team. Their whole job is to be the glue that holds all the different teams together. Now, wait, there's some really common misconception here we need to clear up. A lot of people think this Nexus Integration Team does all the hard integration work themselves. Nope, that is not their job. Think of them more like facilitators, coaches, or even air traffic controllers. They ensure that the integration happens smoothly, but the actual responsibility for doing the work still belongs to the individual Scrum teams. They're guiding the planes, not flying them. So, we've covered a ton of ground here, from building stable teams to focusing on value to shifting your leadership style. But now, the real work begins. I want to leave you with a challenge. Go back to your teams tomorrow and ask yourself this one simple question. What is the single biggest thing getting in our way right now, and what can I, as a leader, do to remove it? That's it. That's where real Agile leadership truly begins.